Hello, this is Cynthia Sue Larson with RealityShifters.com, and I'd like to talk to you today about the idea of indigenous wisdom and timeline wisdom, the language of spirit, all these ideas. And so this all started for me when I attended something called the Language of Spirit, and it was an open dialogue that had been open to the public. It was originated with physicist David Bohm back in 1992. He'd been trying to get a gathering of indigenous people together for some time. And in 1992, the Fetzer Institute in Michigan hosted this gathering. Also in attendance was linguist Dan Moonhawk Alford, and also, of course, David Bohm and David Pete, another physicist. And then there was the Harvard-educated Blackfood elder, who's now an elder, Leroy Little Bear. And I wasn't at that first gathering, but linguist Dan Moonhawk Alford describes some of the significance of why it would be so important to David Bohm to get together with indigenous people. David Bohm is the father of the holographic interpretation of quantum physics. So David looks at everything being connected, and just like if you do acupressure with your ear, it's like a little man upside down in the ear. You can massage your ear and get the benefit of almost as if you'd had a full body massage. So this idea that there's an unfoldment that's happening, that everything is interconnected at a very deep level throughout nature, this is something very important to David Bohm, very important to indigenous people too. And so linguist Dan Moonhawk Alford studies language, and the reason that David Bohm was so excited to have this gathering in the first place was because he had read the work of Benjamin Lee Whorf. Now Dan Moonhawk Alford, his big great hero was also Benjamin Lee Whorf. And Benjamin Lee Whorf's idea as a linguist was that language shapes how we think, that you can actually change the way you view the world based on the way that your language moves with a person in a culture. So here's the idea that Dan Moonhawk Alford describes in many of his, he wrote this, thank goodness he had his writings because he's no longer with us. I met him and he was such a great, wonderful person, one of the nicest, kindest, most intelligent people I've ever met. But what he wrote was, whereas every sentence in English must properly have a subject, a noun or noun phrase, and a verb, many, if not most, Native American languages can have sentences with no nouns at all. And then, pardon me, I'm going to try to pronounce this. Repi, a full sentence in Hopi, referring to a celestial event, means flashed. Where we have to say, if we want to say that in a sentence, we would say, the lightning flashed, for example. But this goes much further. Sakaje says that when he's speaking Mi'kmaq back on the reserve, he can go all day long without ever uttering a single noun. This statement is mind-boggling to most English speakers. So much of our facts and knowledge are wrapped up in nouns, so what would all that language look like in a language that doesn't value nouns in the same way? This includes all concepts, all the way to God. So this is the words of Dan Moonhawk Alford, and he's quoting this individual that I'm trying to pronounce his name, Sakaje, who is there, I guess. And then Dan Moonhawk Alford went further. He documented 8 points of agreement, which was the great finding from this first meeting at the 1992 meeting at the Fetzer Institute in Michigan. And the first one is everything that exists vibrates. This point of agreement is important because it moves beyond our usual thingy or particle notion of existence based on raw sensory impressions, which is favored in the Indo-European language family and allows a justification on the part of Native Americans for the existence of spirits. Like, how are things inspired? How does a baby seem to have personality right from the start? Where did that come from? You know, things like that. So these kinds of ideas, I'm just reading, this is all written down on my blog. You can click the link below the video and read, you know, the words of Dan Moonhawk Alford as he's summarizing this amazing gathering and what came out of it. Number 2, everything is in flux. And here's Sakaje again. His idea was the only constant is change, constant change, transformations. Everything is naturally friendly, trying to reach a more stable state instead of bullying each other around. That kind of process, the English language doesn't allow you to talk about too much, but most Native American languages are based on capturing the motions of nature, the rhythms, the vibrations, the relationships that you can form with all these elements, just like a periodic table in a different way. Relationships rather than a game of billiards where you only count the ones that go in and all of the other motion doesn't count. So actually everything's in flux and that all counts. It all matters. Okay, number 3, the part enfolds the whole. Not just whole, it's more than the sum of its parts. It's, here's Sake J again, that Dan Moonhawk Alford is mentioning the ideas that were said. When we wear leathers and beads and eagle things like that, it's not seen as being totally ludicrous or just pure decoration. It's seen as containing something you want to have a relationship with. And so this part enfolding the whole is an awareness that that we can look at something that's small, that's just a little part of something, and it actually is connected to the wholeness of it. So that's like the wheel or the tire on the car is enfolding the entire car. Now that's a man-made thing, it's a machine, but if we made things that well, it would be more like nature. Okay, number 4, there's an implicate order to the universe. And Sake J points out this implicate order holds everything together, whether we want it to or not, and exists independently of our beliefs, our perceptions, or our linguistic categories. It exists totally independently of the methods or rules that people use to arrive at what it is. And David Bohm's captured that with the great phrase, the implicate order versus the explicate order of things that can explain quite concretely, such as a rock falling out of a window. This also agrees with the Lakota phrase, scan, which points to the motion behind the motion. So there's a motion behind the motion. There's this implicate order that exists in everything already. Okay, number 5, the ecosphere is basically friendly. Sake J maintains that the planet, especially the Americas, as well as the physical universe, are basically gentle and friendly. You don't have an electron jumping and bullying into others unless it knows it's missing a stable state and knows it can reach that stable state and increase its own stability. Number 6, nature can be taught new tricks. And Sake J again, we also agreed that the world out there that exists, that reality, not imaginality, but the agreed upon reality that everyone agrees on, can be taught new tricks with, for example, the cyclotron. And what was raised in the meeting was, are these new tricks beneficial? Or will they create a hostile universe on their own, independent of scientists? Once they teach electrons how to jump and how to amass energy to jump, and it becomes a bullying, hostile biological world. And then I think this is Dan saying, reminds me of Alan Watts talking about how the universe has had to learn how to get ever smaller and ever larger as we probe it with microscopes and telescopes, receding ever further in the distance as the self observes itself. So this is really the key, as always, with quantum physics. Who are we? Who's the observer? Wow. And so if we're teaching our technology to be observers and to start bullying things around and getting results that on a very lower level of consciousness we desire, more like a 2-dimensional flatlander desire, that's a very low level desire. The higher levels of our consciousness are more connected to the oneness that permeates everything. The original source, the creator, zero entropy, whatever you want to call that. God, yes. Okay, number 7, quantum potential and spirit. After listening to the physicists and American Indians talk for a few days, it struck me, now this is Dan Moonhawk Alford, that the way that physicists are using the term potential or quantum potential is nearly identical to the way Native Americans use the term spirit. They all agreed there was something similar going on. Quantum potential, spirit, there's some motivating kind of maybe a sentience, who knows. Okay, number 8, the principle of complementarity. Physicists for all this century have realized that our usual notion of bipolar or black and white opposites was insufficient when working with nature. The first clue came when they asked incoming light, are you a particle? And it answered, yes. Are you a wave? And it answered, yes. This is equivalent to asking whether something is a noun or a verb and getting a yes answer to both, which is exactly how Native American language nouns are made up. as verbs with suffixes that make them temporarily into nouns for discussion's sake. This yes, complementarity, is foreign to Indo-European languages, but quite common in other languages, families such as the Chinese notion of yin-yang, and represents a higher level of formal operations in Piaget's terms, referred to by some as post-formal operations, and that which lies beyond normal Western Indo-European development. So here we have the 8 points of agreement. I really wanted to go through those because I think they're inspirational, and I think I can feel something wonderful just in noticing, okay, we can teach nature new tricks, but let's do it in a collaborative, positive fashion. Let's bring how good can it get into this this novelty, this imagining, this choosing of which possible reality we're all collectively going to be stepping into. Let's make that choice. So collectively, we agree that let's find out for all of us, how good can it get? So until next time, this is Cynthia Sue Larson. Of course, you know my favorite question. Can't help to say it again. I love it so much. How good can it get? With realityshifters.com. Take care.